It's fun being a birder. Now here's a neat find. Woodpecker has been at work. When it's your passion, you just love doing it. It's a very easy thing to get involved with.
Well, welcome to Anoka County today. I'm Martha Weaver with Anoka County, and I am joined today by Bob Holtz. He's our adult education specialist at Wargo Nature Center and also our chief ornithologist, our Birding with Bob expert. And today, quite the topic. We've been waiting for it for a while. We're going to be talking about the sex life of birds and whether there are any similarities between bird sex life and human sex life. There might be some, but not really. What do you think?
Well, birds and people don't develop quite the same way. For example, if I had a picture of you when you were 2 years old,
Yep.
and another when you were 22 years old, I may not be able to find any clues, for example, that that's you in both pictures. But if somebody said, oh, that is Martha in both cases, then I'd say, well, something's really changed. If I showed you a picture of a 2-year-old yellow warbler and a 4-year-old yellow warbler, which is quite a time span difference there, we'd have trouble finding anything that looked different, even though it was the very same bird that had a picture taken of it. So the real thing here is that the birds, particularly the females, can tell those differences in the bird world. The females pick up on a variety of things that they see. And we wouldn't notice, but there's subtleties there that they can pick out. They notice a certain male is more colorful than the others, which is maybe a good clue that he's more fit. He may sing better. He may bring her more food when they're courting. In barn swallows, the females tend to pick out the one with a redder breast. Except in Europe, they pick out the one with a longer tail.
All right, so they usually have a discerning eye.
Yes, they do. Yep, yep.
Are they monogamous? I mean, you hear about geese.
Yeah, and geese fit that category pretty well. And, people are monogamous too, but, you can be monogamous and still have a lot of infidelity there. So it's two things that we need to keep in mind as we talk about that.
Okay.
But there's one study, I've got some notes here, 38% of the tree swallow's nestlings were a result of avian adultery. And in one brood of 6, not a one was fathered by the man in that territory.
Okay.
And they know that from DNA studies.
Okay.
Chestnut-sided warblers, it was 50%. Indigo buntings, 33%. Great egrets, 30%. Field sparrows, 19%. And those are the percentages that we know about.
Right.
There's probably a lot of others that got missed in the study.
Let me ask you a question. With dogs, they can have a different sire for the different pups in that litter. In this case, can there only be one male involved with the females, or is it the same thing where you can have an egg that has one pairing and another egg that has a different pairing? You can.
Like that nest in the example I just gave, 6 nestlings, not one of them fathered by that fellow in that territory, and it might have been 3 or 4 other fathers for that matter.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing can happen there.
Okay.
And of other studies with little songbirds, they have found now there's only about 14% of the species that we haven't found infidelity. And I would guess after time and more studies that'll drop even lower than 14%.
14%.
So, but the reality here is this is good for bird species. It generates more variety, and genetic variety helps species survive better.
This is some pretty amazing information. When you're talking about percentages, how do ornithologists uncover this kind of information?
Yeah. Some of it's observation, but key thing now is DNA studies.
Okay.
As people now are pretty well aware that we use DNA studies to see, is so-and-so the criminal who was at the scene of the crime.
Right.
And we're releasing people from prison because we put them in jail 20 years ago, and now the evidence that we can identify says hey, they're innocent, So we do the same with birds, and there's a lot left to be studied, but that's being done quite a bit. Red-winged blackbirds make an interesting study. About 20% of all the young blackbirds that are fathered by a given male are birds that he fathered in a different territory. And half of all the redwings' nests have eggs in them that were fertilized by a different male. So there's a lot of that. This kind of infidelity is also pretty common in Baltimore orioles, bobolinks, eastern bluebirds, stuff like that. The northern cardinal, it's not true, because if you watch your cardinals, and most everybody has cardinals in the area, the male and female are usually together. In other words, he's kind of saying, hey, stick with me, kid, you know, and keeping the others away also. Yeah. But chickadees and house sparrows and tree swallows, the studies say it's the females that are the more promiscuous ones. They go around seeking some other mating. And it has the same value. She's looking for somebody with good genes. At least it looks has quality. She knows nothing about genes.
Right, right. But it's a survival of the fittest sort of deal.
Right, and survival of the fittest means you leave offspring. So, and that leaves your genes there for them. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right, so the male bird's trying to find his female bird. What is the male's first concern or biggest concern for the breeding season? What's he doing?
First of all, he has to have a territory. He's got to have a space in which he doesn't want any other males of that species around, and then he wants to find a mate. There's a number of other things, but that's two things that concern him. And the value of that territory is that this isolates him from other males of the same species, so there's less conflict. They know where the escape routes are, they know where the food is, they know where to hide from predators. So territory is a very valuable thing. And it's, in many cases, it's just a short-term thing, you know, long enough to get the family raised, you know. It reduces fighting, and it reduces promiscuity. As we've seen, it doesn't eliminate it, you know, and so on.
Now, give me an idea, when we're talking about the chickadees and the cardinals, how big of a territory are we talking about? Like a block, a square block? A tree?
It could be. Well, if you're an eagle, it's very small.
Really?
Yeah, it's just
I was going to think it would be the exact opposite.
No, they don't have too big. They can nest near other and go elsewhere to catch their food and so on, because they go out to get fish and things. Great blue herons will have a whole bunch of nests in a tree, and they just have a little territory around the nest. Then there's so many of them there, though, that they can't just use the area around where they're living to feed, so they're off flying in different directions, finding a wetland area where they're going to feed. And so they have a feeding territory different from their
home territory,
their nesting territory. Right?
Fascinating.
Yeah. There's a lot of variety. It doesn't all work the same way.